You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke McKenna, but today's case is about the missing girl who vanished from a train found 20 years later. Now, when children go missing, parents everywhere grieve for them and want them to be returned to their families. And in this case, we actually get to see that happen. By the way, I am posting a new series this October called ODDtober, and it's just going to be the strangest true crime cases you can possibly imagine, and there's going to be so much content posted this month, so please make sure to subscribe and be just festive with me this October and have a little bit more fun with true crime as much as we can, because it is a serious topic. However, these are going to be cases where it really surprises you in many ways. Let's get back to the story. These names are extremely hard for me to pronounce, and I'm so sorry if I get any of them wrong, but if you want to correct me, please do it nicely in the comments. But it was 1999 in Minsk, Belarus, and Viktor Moisenko and his 4-year-old daughter Yulia were going to a train station that early October. It would take them 60 miles to travel to Aspavochi, and while on this journey, Victor unfortunately fell asleep, and when he awoke, his daughter was gone. Now, when Victor realized that his daughter was missing, he immediately called the police as well as Yulia's mother and his wife, and the search began from there. It was pretty quick actually, and they began searching trains that had gone by, the train platforms. They were putting up missing persons posters everywhere where this train had traveled. It had traveled about 25 miles by the time Victor woke up and realized that his daughter was missing, and missing persons posters were put out everywhere. Police were also asking witnesses at the train stations that would go the same route every day and that was on this route with Victor and Yulia if they had seen anything, and nobody really had. Victor decided to continuously every day go back to the train station and take this same route. He would drive it himself, the 25 miles every single day, to see if he could find anything, and yet still nothing. This is when the police began to point fingers at Yulia's father, Victor, saying that they believed he had something to do with his daughter's disappearance. Now, allegedly, there was blood stains, just a little bit of blood, on Victor's shirt when the police got there that day after he had called. However, after DNA tests were run, this was kind of ruled out as being a part of the investigation whatsoever, and there wasn't really any strong evidence against Victor at this time. And due to the language barrier and having so little information on this actual case of what happened so many years ago, I'm not sure exactly what this test said. I'm assuming that this blood belonged to Victor, and so they ruled it out from there from being Yulia's. But like I said, I'm not 100% sure. Her parents continued to take every train that they could. They got off at every single stop. They would put up missing persons posters. They would check the wells, shops, deserted houses, search entire areas before getting on the train once again and going to the next stop. 2 years later, and still no one had seen or heard from Yulia, and most people, including investigators, truly believed that the number one theory that was most likely was the fact that Victor had something to do with it. However, this was a theory that they would be very wrong about. Now, her parents finally decided at this point that they needed to move out of their family home that they had been living in when Yulia was with them. And this was because it was extremely close to the train station, and it was almost a trigger for them at this point. Every time a train would go by, they could no longer watch it without having flashbacks of what they had gone through and continuously thinking and mourning their daughter. They couldn't heal from that. They also saw Yulia in their home frolicking around and playing as she did before, but knowing that she could possibly never do that in this home again, and it was heartbreaking for them. And eventually they had to move somewhere far away from any train station so they could move on with their life. 16 years later, this case was cold, and nobody knew what happened to that girl on the train who went missing that day. However, in 2017, this case would be reopened by investigators who were determined to prove these parents guilty. They put them under a lie detector test, and they both actually passed. However, this polygraph system is not 100% accurate, as we all know. The investigators were saying that they didn't see any other theory that was plausible except for the parents having something to do with it, that they either put her in underground adoption, that they murdered her, or did something with her, because they had nothing else to go on. And so they were blaming the parents because of it. Then in 2019, there would be a huge break in this case, and not due to investigators. Victor would actually get a text message to his phone, and although he didn't know how to answer it, he was not going to miss out on the opportunity to respond, because this was the first contact they had with their daughter in 20 years. Yulia wanted to meet them, and her older sister that she didn't even know she had at this point, named Nadia, called her back, telling her who she was and apologizing for the fact that their father, Victor, didn't know how to respond, and that is why she was calling her. And then she decided to hand the phone to their mother, and that is when their mother told Yulia that she was so excited she began to cry, and also to tell her adoptive parents thank you for raising her. They decided to meet at a police station, and when the family got together after 2 decades of being apart, it was a bit overwhelming to say the least. They were all crying and hugging each other profusely and couldn't even get out words because they were so overwhelmed with joy. They said it was an instant connection and they knew they were family. They told Yulia they had been searching for her for the longest time and truly believed that she would be found and make her way back to them. And now she had. Her mother asked her to sit on her lap like she was a child again, just so she could relive that moment when her daughter was only 4 years old. And her father pleaded with her to forgive him for falling asleep that day on the train. And Yulia told him, you know, I have nothing against you. It's not your fault. I don't blame you. The family then walked around the train station where Yulia had gone missing and talked till about 3 a.m. And that is when Yulia said she needed to get back to her hometown where her own daughter was staying. She had had a daughter, and her parents didn't even know that they had a grandchild. A DNA test had been taken to find if this was for sure their daughter, just to make sure, even though they knew it. The police said it was probably best to get a DNA test to just make sure, and it was in fact a match. She was a member of their family. She was Yulia. So what happened to her in those 20 years? Well, Yulia had been found October 21st of 1999, 3 weeks after she had disappeared. However, this was a bit far from where she had disappeared from, and it was in Ryazan, which is 1,000 kilometers or 621 miles away. And when they found her, she was clutching a library book, which was from a town nearby Ryazan. And so they believed that this is where she was from and not where she was actually from. When police found Yulia at only 4 years old, she could tell them quite a bit of information. She said she remembered that her parents' names were Luda and Victor, which were their names. And she also said she remembered going with a man and a woman from the train station, and that they would sleep in abandoned houses because they were trying to hide from the police. The police had also noted that she had a Belarus accent, which is where she was originally from, because of the words she would use for vegetables like potato and onion, and that was something that they had said in Belarus. However, they did not search in Belarus for her parents. They just stayed in the area where she had been found, and of course no one came forward, and the parents of Yulia were not told or even knew about this little girl that had been found. Eventually Yulia was given to a psychological support center, which was where children were held before being put into an orphanage. Now thankfully for Yulia, she didn't even have to be transferred to the orphanage before she was adopted. You see, the ODDtober family came in and decided that they wanted to adopt a child. They had had 2 sons, and they had wanted a little girl, and she was fortunately the one they chose. But actually, they didn't necessarily choose her. You see, her mother Irina was a pharmacist in Ryazan, and she had had 2 sons, and her youngest son had been born with serious health problems, and she had basically said to the universe, to God, whatever she believed in, I'm not exactly sure, but she had said if her son survived, if he was healthy, she would adopt a child and raise it, just to kind of help out another child. And her son was healthy and survived, and so she went into this psychological support center, and she basically said, I'm going to adopt any child you want me to, and I'll raise it. And they pointed to Yulia. Throughout the years, Yulia would often tell her family that she remembered riding on a train with an unknown man and woman, and that they went to these abandoned buildings, they begged for money, and they were basically hiding from the police, is what she remembered. However, throughout the years, it kind of changed into Yulia believing that these 2 people were her parents, and that when she was dropped off at this train station and the police found her, it was because her own parents abandoned her. It was kind of her mind transforming the situation to either make it better for her knowing that she was adopted and why, or even, giving her a little bit of anger towards her parents because she didn't know anything. And that can be extremely frustrating when you don't know anything and your brain kind of just makes up stories to make you feel better. But the story did kind of transfer into that. So for a while, she didn't even want to know her family. But of course, throughout the years, that changed. She went to school to be a pharmacist, just like her adoptive mother. And then she had a daughter with her boyfriend, Isla. At this point, because she had a daughter and wanted her to know her actual grandparents, she decided to start searching the internet to see if she could find her parents. She was searching in a girl for lost into Google, and nothing was really coming up. Actually, a lot was coming up, but nothing she could find about herself. And she would tell her boyfriend that she was so sad because she thought no one was looking for her and that she was not wanted. And so her boyfriend felt horrible and decided to start searching himself. And that is when he put in the 2 words, girl and train. And that is when Yulia's life story came up, and she found her parents. While reading all of this, she began to cry, and she immediately called the police station in Belarus to get more pictures and to get the phone number for her family, and that is when she left the message with them. Yulia has said that now, being a mother herself, she understands what kind of heartbreak that must have been for her parents to lose their daughter so young. She says she wouldn't wish it on anyone, and now she says she happily lives with 2 different families, her birth family and her adoptive family, and she loves them both equally as much. And she says she even wakes up to texts from her own birth family saying good morning to our daughter and granddaughter. And it really is the happiest story that you could ever read about as far as true crime. And I wanted to start off this month with a nice, solved, happy sort of video, because I feel like that's definitely lacking on my channel and in the true crime community, because we do try to do the more unsolved and try to help people who haven't gotten answers. However, that can be a lot on your soul and on your mind. So I hope this was just a little bit of a relief for all of you, and I hope this month is as well. We're just going to dive into the craziest sort of cases. And if you want to request any down below, I kind of have an outline of what I want to do, but I will always take your opinions into consideration. So make sure to subscribe if you're not already, and thumbs up these videos so I know that you're excited for this new series. And don't ever forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay.